Right now, as you're listening to this, you are breathing. You're doing it completely on autopilot. In fact, in just the next 10 seconds, you're going to inhale roughly half a liter of air, and you won't even notice a single moment of it. I mean, oxygen is literally the one thing your entire life depends on more than anything else. Way more than food, more than water, even more than sleep. And yet, we almost never give it a second thought. But what if it just stopped? And I don't mean slowly fading away. I want you to imagine a wild scenario for this explainer. What if, right this very second, the oxygen in the atmosphere just completely disappeared? Well, the real answer to what would happen is far stranger and honestly a lot faster than most people imagine.
Okay, let's dive into this. If oxygen were removed in a literal instant, you wouldn't just stand there feeling a little short of breath. Nope, you have about 15 seconds. That's it. You would completely lose useful consciousness in under 15 seconds. And hey, this isn't just some dramatic Hollywood guesswork. This is grounded in decades of intense, real-world aerospace medicine research. Studies conducted by NASA and the U.S. Air Force on rapid decompression show that test subjects exposed to oxygen-free environments at altitude lose useful consciousness in as little as 9 to 12 seconds. The clock ticks down incredibly fast.
To understand why this shutdown happens so shockingly fast, we really have to look at the numbers. The air all around you right now is roughly 21% oxygen. When you suddenly take away that 21%, the immediate failure point in your body actually isn't your lungs, it's your brain. Your brain is shockingly fragile without a constant, uninterrupted supply of oxygen. Think about this for a second. Your brain makes up only about 2% of your total body weight, yet it completely hogs the supply. It consumes roughly 20% of your body's entire oxygen intake. So, without that 21% in the air, the brain's lights just go out, almost immediately. Part 1. Where does it come from? The sources of oxygen. Let's change the parameters of our thought experiment just a bit. Say the scenario is slightly different. Say oxygen doesn't just vanish by magic everywhere all at once, but it simply stops being replenished. Production hits zero. This is actually a much more fascinating question because it forces us to confront a reality most of us completely ignore. If production just stopped today, where does your next breath actually come from? And this brilliantly illustrates the surprising reality of our planet. The answer to where our oxygen comes from divides roughly right down the middle between two very different sources. Now, growing up, we're all taught about the green half, right? We know that roughly half of the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere comes from land plants, massive forests and vegetation. We see trees every single day. But the other half, an almost exactly equal share of our life support, comes straight from the ocean. Specifically, it comes from microscopic marine organisms called phytoplankton. To really grasp the sheer scale of this ocean production, we have to look at something practically invisible. Incredible research led by oceanographer Sally Chisholm at MIT has highlighted a single genus of marine cyanobacteria. It's called Prochlorococcus, and wow, this tiny thing is likely the most abundant photosynthetic organism on the entire planet, producing a massive, significant percentage of the Earth's entire oxygen supply completely on its own. And yet it is so unfathomably small that literally billions of them could fit into a single drop of seawater. Just think about that, billions in one tiny drop, single-handedly keeping the whole planet breathing.
Part 2. The real threat, CO2, rising carbon dioxide. So this means that if oxygen production simply stopped today, the forests on land going silent would really only be half the story. The oceans would need to stop breathing too. But here is the wild twist that most people never learn in school. If every tree and every single plankton cell on Earth died at once, it actually isn't the lack of oxygen that would kill us first. Not even close. We have to look at the real threat.
The reason we wouldn't immediately suffocate is because of this staggering, almost unbelievable number, 1,200 trillion tons. That is the enormous reserve of oxygen currently just hanging out, held in our atmosphere. It's like a massive planetary savings account that's been building up for eons. Because of this, even with absolutely zero new production from trees or phytoplankton, humanity and most animal life would theoretically survive for centuries before atmospheric oxygen levels dropped low enough to actually become dangerous to breathe. Suffocation? That's a problem for a distant future generation.
So what gets us? Well, the far bigger threat is everything else that depends on the cycle of photosynthesis. While oxygen depletion would take literally centuries, carbon dioxide accumulation presents an immediate, massive crisis. The very moment plants and plankton stop producing oxygen, they also stop consuming carbon dioxide. Meanwhile, human and animal respiration would just keep right on chugging, adding carbon dioxide back into the air with absolutely nothing left to absorb it. The carbon dioxide levels would begin climbing almost immediately. And let me tell you, the danger of that carbon dioxide accelerates incredibly fast.
Research on carbon dioxide toxicity, specifically referenced in studies compiled by physiologist John West, points to a terrifying biological threshold, just 5%. If carbon dioxide concentrations in the air reach above roughly 5%, it causes severe disorientation, intense panic, and eventually unconsciousness. And the crazy part, this happens even while oxygen levels remain almost entirely normal. In our scenario where production stops, most complex life would be wiped out by rising carbon dioxide and total ecosystem collapse way before oxygen ever became the limiting factor.
Part 3. The Great Oxidation. Done this before? Let's move to and see how this builds, because if we step back from our current atmosphere entirely, we find something wild. Earth has actually done this before, just in reverse. We are going to look at one of the most dramatic, earth-shattering shifts in our planet's entire history.
For roughly the first 2 billion years of Earth's history, there was almost zero oxygen in the atmosphere at all. Early life was largely anaerobic, meaning it just did not use oxygen to survive. Then, around 2.4 billion years ago, early cyanobacteria evolved the incredible ability to photosynthesize. They began releasing oxygen as a byproduct on a massive global scale. Geologists called this the Great Oxidation Event. This newly released oxygen violently reacted with dissolved iron in the ancient oceans, essentially rusting the entire planet on a global scale. We can actually still see the evidence of this today in ancient rock layers known as banded iron formations.
But actually, this incredible evolutionary leap wasn't a miracle for the life that was already here. For them, it was a literal apocalypse. In fact, many scientists refer to it as the oxygen catastrophe. You see, to the anaerobic organisms that ruled the Earth at that time, oxygen was highly reactive and incredibly toxic. This sudden flood of a new, deadly gas wiped out the vast majority of life on Earth, making it one of the largest mass extinction events in the planet's history. It's a profound, almost funny irony. The very substance that is absolutely keeping you alive right now was for the organisms that came before you an ecological disaster on a planetary scale.
Part 4. Fragile balance. Invisible systems. So, bringing this all back to today. What the oxygen catastrophe teaches us is something that should genuinely surprise you. Oxygen has never been a stable, guaranteed feature of this planet. It's not just a permanent fixture of the sky we can take for granted. It is the byproduct of billions of years of biological activity, constantly being produced and constantly being consumed. We exist within a fragile, invisible balance between the massive force you can see and the microscopic plankton you will probably never see.
And here is the modern mirror to that ancient history, and it's honestly much closer to your daily life than it feels. We live inside an active, ongoing chemical process that depends heavily on having healthy oceans. Research on ocean health, including some really vital work published through NOAA's ocean monitoring programs, has repeatedly flagged phytoplankton populations as being highly sensitive. They are incredibly vulnerable to modern disruptions like rising sea temperatures and ocean acidification. We don't need oxygen to magically disappear overnight to feel the consequences of this balance shifting. We simply need the systems that produce it, systems that have been working quietly and invisibly for billions of years, to just keep working the way they always have. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? The absolutely crucial point is that our existence is intimately tied to organisms we rarely, if ever, consider. Right now, you are breathing without thinking about it. But as you take your very next breath, I want you to ask yourself, somewhere out there, in an ocean you have likely never seen, did a fragile, invisible microorganism smaller than the width of a human hair just release the exact oxygen molecule that is currently filling your lungs?